Okay, class, in this lesson on stock market data, we're going to use stock data to follow the daily progress of a corporate stock. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with some background information. First, the question here is what stock market data is available on a daily basis? So if you don't know what a stock market is, it is a general term for an institution where stocks are purchased and sold. And stock market transactions are also known as trades. Now, the two most well-known stock markets in the United States is the New York Stock Exchange, or NYSE, and the National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotation System, commonly known as NASDAQ. Now, a wise investor in stocks makes data-driven decisions by examining a number of things, but one of the primary things they look at are short and long-term trends, changes, fluctuations, and consistencies. Now, what's really fortunate, or the great thing, is that you don't need to be a professional stockbroker, or you don't even need to be a financial analyst to follow the market. What you do need to know is to have an understanding of trading data. Okay, now before we go into some trading data, let's take a look at some terminology. So in order to interpret stock market data, you need to know the following. So when you think of, or when you see the term last, it is the price of that stock, or the price per share from the last trade of a particular stock. When you hear the word or see the word open or opening price, that is the first price at which a share of stock was traded during a regular day's trading session. Now, a regular trading day session in the United States is typically from 9:30 East Coast time or Eastern time, and the market closes at 4 p.m. Now, of course, there are stocks that are being traded after hours, and also if you're dealing with international stocks, so stocks outside of NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, those will be traded in their time. Close, or the word close or closing price, is the last price at which a share of a stock was traded during a regular day's trading session. And then the word high represents the highest price at which one share of that stock was traded on a given day. And then the opposite is also true. The word low is the lowest price at which one share of the stock was traded on a given day. Now, the volume represents the number of shares traded in a given time period. Sometimes the volume is listed as sales in 100, so you have to be careful of the denomination. 52-week high represents the highest price at which one share was traded over the last year, and then 52-week low would be the lowest price at which one share was traded over the last year. Now, the acronym CHG, or net change, shows the change between the previous day's closing price and the current day's closing price. And then after hours trading refers to the trades made after the market closes. A difference between one day's closing price and the next morning's opening price means after hours trades on that stock occurred. Okay, so when there's a difference, again, between the closing price of one day versus the next morning's opening price, if they're not the same, it means that there were some after hours trading going on. Okay, so let's take a look at 5 examples of how to interpret Apple stocks. So AAPL is the acronym for Apple stocks. And so the question here is, in the chart below, what is the difference between the high and the low price? Okay, between the high and the low price. So if you take a look, the high price is at $253.88, and then the low price is at $249.88. So to calculate the difference, we just take the high minus the low. So this will be $253.88 minus $249.88, and that gives us 4. Okay, so that is the difference. Okay, now if you take a look at this chart, you'll see that this was taken during trading session, okay? So opening price, and it was trading throughout the day, and this was captured at about halfway through the trading session. And so we're looking at the high and low of this time period. Okay, let's go ahead on to example 2. Same graph, but now we're looking at different things. We're looking for the actual volume of Apple shares, okay? So the volume is indicated right here, 13.23 M. That means that there are 13.23 million shares that we're trading at this time. Okay, all right, now example 3, again looking at the same chart. The question here is, at what price did Apple shares close the day before? Okay, what was the closing price on the day before? Okay, now assuming there's no after hours trade, which didn't happen, you would take a look at the opening price, okay? So the opening price is the price that the share closed the day before. Okay, so that'd be $252.10. That was the price per share. And then in example 4, the question here is, what is the difference in prices as a percent between the prior day's closing price and the current trading price? Okay, what is the difference in prices as a percent between the prior day's closing price and the current trading price? Okay, so that other the information you want to look at is right here, okay? This is the current share price at the time that this graph was taken, and the closing price from the prior day was 252.1. Okay, so we'd have to take the difference. So that's 252.10, and we subtract, 0.66. That's the current price minus 252.10. That is the closing price of the prior day, or the opening price for today, and that works out to 0.56. Oops, let's rewrite that again. 0.56. Then we're going to take 0.56 and we're going to divide that by the closing price of the prior day. Okay, and that works out to 0.0022, or 0.22% change. Okay, that is the difference in price as a percent, right? We're looking at the percentage. So this tells us that the price went up by 0.22% at the time that this graph or chart was captured. Okay, and then the last example here, what is the net change between the 52-week high and the current trading price? All right, well, the 52-week high is represented right here. So over the last year, the highest share price was 288.62, and the current trading price is 252.66. So we're going to take, we're going to take 252.66, because that's the current or the latest, and we're going to subtract out the 52-week high of 0.62, okay, and you'll notice that this is going to come out to be a negative answer. It comes out to negative 35.96, and then we're going to take negative 35.96 and divide it by the 52-week high, which is 288.62, and that works out to negative 0.12, or I'm going to say 125, sorry. Let's go ahead and redo this. 0.125. If you change this to a percent, this is going to be a negative 12.5%, okay, net change. So you could see that the the price has dropped 12.5% relative to the 52-week high. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to you. A lot of this was just understanding what the data is telling us and then calculating the differences or net change. If any of this was confusing to you, please go back to the beginning of the recording and listen to this again. Thank you.